This is lecture 2 on the nature of the sacrament of the altar. Hey class! Alright, so just a short video message for everybody before I get into the work that we have for this week. Alright, so you're doing pretty good. I printed off all your questions and I'll do a video like this one and I'll answer those questions. Really good ones. Thanks. I got to encourage you guys because of the context in which we're having to do our work right now. I know it's not exciting and I know it's not fun to just have to read the catechism, answer the questions, or listen to a lecture where I'm on the screen and I'm showing you things. I know it's not exciting, but it does do you good. It does you good to have to read the material. It does you good to have to reflect on it and think on it. And I'm trying to keep the work that you do here to the essential. Notice I didn't say to the bare minimum, because I'm not minimalizing the importance of your development in the knowledge of the Lord through the small catechism and what it gives us from the scriptures. So it's not, oh, I'm just minimalizing it. No, I'm giving you the essential. And so the work that I assign you, I really want you to put your heart and soul in it, because it's not extensive, it's not as broad as it could be, but it is essential, and I want you to do that. So for the Lord's Supper especially, a lot of the things I'm going to give you, I think, from here to the end of this section is just read the catechism and then do the read-response exercises that I assign you to do, because this is the only way I can analyze whether or not you're actually reading the catechism. I can assign it all day, and I don't know if you've read it. So it's not that I don't trust you, it's that I have to verify that you're actually reading it. And so the way I'm going to verify it is by you doing the read-response exercises. So I got to tell you, some of you are not doing them at all, and that's not going to work out well for you. You need to do this work, because otherwise I'm going to have to give a call to your parents, and I'm going to have to say, look, this student is not doing their work. And so it's an essential part, so I want you to do it. All right, so before we get to today's screen video where I'm going to go over some things about the Lord's Supper, I need to show you something. This book right here, Lutheranism 101, I'm going to be using sections on the Lord's Supper out of that book, out of this book, to explain some things, because it does a better job than I can do on my own. So you don't have to buy that book, but you do have to answer the questions that I give you in the video on your read-response exercise that you'll receive with this. And I'll try not to mess it up, because I've messed it up in the past where you couldn't answer anything with the read-response exercise because I didn't give it to you in the right format. But I'll fix that. Okay, so once again, before we start today, it's coming out of this book right here. There's a section on the Lord's Supper. Get it straight. And so that's what I'll be giving the lecture from. So stick with it, man. You're doing great. And we're going to get this thing done. All right. So come on now. Let's stay with it. Stick with the program, and we'll do well. Great. Okay, so we're going to get started today using the Lutheranism 101. Not a long video, but an important video to help put the Lord's Supper in perspective. So let's go ahead and get started. What I'm really concerned about, and what I really want you to understand, is that the Lord's Supper is something that Jesus instituted. So this little section up here helps you understand it right right here. So I don't know. Perhaps the right thing to do is to just highlight the whole thing here. The Lord's Supper, some of you ask, why the Lord's Supper? Because it's instituted by the Lord. That's why. Why bread? Why wine? Because Jesus said so. What is it for? Forgiveness of sins. It's just that simple. It's not a complicated. It's not complicated, and I know that you're learning and you're looking for some sort of deeper reason why, but there is no deeper reason why we are supposed to know what the Lord's Supper is and participate in the Lord's Supper. There's no deeper reason, there's no better reason than because Jesus said so. That's the best reason there is. Why bread and wine? Because he said so. Why do we do it? Because he said so. What does he give from it? He gives forgiveness of sins. Just like the same forgiveness of sins that you receive when you believe his word. That's the same thing you get in the Lord's Supper. The Lord's Supper, it's given for you. This is not something for you to figure out. This is something for you to receive. All right, so everything you need to know. Jesus teaches everything you need to know about the Lord's Supper in a collection of Bible verses known as the Words of Institution. That's found in your catechism as well, but it's just good to emphasize that. The Words of Institution tell us everything that we need to know about the Lord's Supper. Where are those Words of Institution found? It tells you right in your catechism, but I'll just emphasize it again right here. Matthew 26 through 28, Mark chapter 14, verses 22 through 24, Luke chapter 22, verses 19 through 20, and 1 Corinthians 11, verses 23 through 25. Those are the 4 places where you will find the institution of the Lord's Supper. And it's going to be on your read response exercise, which will follow chronologically along with the lecture. So you have to know those. Oh, and by the way, just a reminder, 7th of May, you have to have the Words of Institution as they are written in the catechism memorized. So here we go. Some need to know. Words of institution, what does that mean? They are the words spoken by Jesus to institute. That means establish. That's what that means. So you don't have to, get all freaked out about the word institution. The words spoken by Jesus to establish that we're supposed to do this. And not only are we supposed to do it, it establishes what it means as well. And so now you're getting a message on the screen there from Mr. Gundel. But you can ignore that part. Why did Jesus do it? What did Jesus do? He just took bread and wine, he blessed it with his word, and he gave it and he said, this is what you do for forgiveness of sins. Why? Because it's for you. It's given for you. So need to know. This section right here, you've got a question in your questionnaire right here on this. Need to know. What is a testament? What is a testament? Here it is. A testament is a will that establishes the disposition. That means, disposition means establishes who gets what. That's just what that means. A will that establishes who gets what concerning one's belongings at the time of death. So think of a loved one who loves you very much, and they write in their will that after they die, you're supposed to get a bazillion dollars. Well, when they die, you get a bazillion dollars because they put it in their testament, their last will and testament. Well, the Lord's Supper is the Lord's testament or covenant, and what you get is forgiveness of sins. You get Jesus' body and blood and the forgiveness of sins in this testament. It is a big mystery. So many of the questions that you guys submitted to me were really questions about how mysterious this all feels and sounds. I get that. It is a mystery. It is the big mystery. All right? Some of God's gifts to us are far too great for us to comprehend. They just don't make sense to our minds because our minds are fallen and our minds don't think God's thoughts the way that they will one day think His thoughts. But right now we just have to take it by His word that we don't always understand what He says, but that doesn't make it untrue. We can't explain them. If we try, we might explain the mystery away, and we don't want to do that. We may actually explain the forgiveness of sins away, and we certainly don't want to do that. So when you hear these words of Jesus, listen to exactly what He says. Don't try to make this mystery into something you can understand. Jesus says, "This bread is my body." Jesus says, "The wine is the cup of the New Testament in my blood." The word is just the English version of an equal sign. You know, I do that all the time when I used to use the whiteboard in class. You would see that all the time. I would write a word and I would put equals. Well, that's what you should think of, that the bread equals Jesus' body, the wine equals Jesus' blood. Why? Because He says so. Because His word makes things true just by Him willing it to be true. It's the same way He raised Lazarus from the dead. By His word, He spoke and Lazarus came forth from the dead. Why? Because He willed it so. Under the bread and wine, we also receive Jesus' body and blood, the same body that was nailed to the cross, the same blood that was shed for our sin. It is also the same body and blood that He showed to His disciples when He rose from the dead. So that's what we're receiving in the Lord's Supper. If Jesus' body and blood are there in the Lord's Supper, then Jesus is there. He is present under the elements of bread and wine in the Lord's Supper. And we call it the real presence. He is really and truly there. We can't explain the real presence. We don't know mechanically how does that work. You can't explain it the same way you can explain how a car works. It's just not possible. Yikes! Are Lutherans cannibals? We eat Jesus' body and drink His blood. Are we cannibals? No, we're not cannibals. All right, so let's read this section together. Because Lutherans teach that Jesus is really present with His body and blood, they've been accused of cannibalism. But rest easy, it isn't true. A cannibal eats physical flesh, biological flesh, with their teeth. While we teach that Jesus is bodily present, we do not teach that He is physically present. He's not biologically present. Now, we went over that in the last class, but this just reiterates it. After rising from the dead, Jesus appeared to the disciples in a locked room and showed them His hands and side. How did He get into the locked room? We don't know. We don't know. Somehow He moved His body through walls or a locked door without displacing the wall or the locked door. He just simply went through it because He can do that. Well, His body in his blood, even though he has body and blood right now, it didn't take up any space. We don't know how that works. We just know that it's true. All right, so we're going to stop there for today. We're going to start with the technical stuff on Thursday, it should be. So have a wonderful day, and finish your read response exercise, and we'll move on.